Anthony, what's going on?
What's going on, dude?
Back again. We're going to dive deep today and give an honest conversation about what a day in the life, what a week in the life looks like. Obviously, there's a lot of videos on social media that kind of glamorize tech careers and maybe give a false impression that you can work 10 hours a week and make $700K a year.
I wish that was possible.
But it's a great time to connect. It's Q1. Last year just ended. You're kind of ramping into a new year, a new territory. And so we'll kind of dive deep into some of the biggest things you're focused on a day-to-day basis. And just for reference, you may have seen Anthony in a past podcast. I've worked with him for multiple years. He's been in tech sales for 10 years. He also has social media on TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn that I will link below. Someone I trust, by the way, and actually verify, not just another, not just someone making dancing TikToks about tech sales. But nonetheless, Anthony, maybe as a starting point, one, appreciate you being here, but I know, like we mentioned, it's a new year. You're kind of prioritizing everything, and maybe give everyone a sense for what your day is like right now as an enterprise account executive planning out the next year ahead of you.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time right now, Eric, being in tech sales and seeing all these day in the life videos. I see a lot of people doing minimal work and more dances, but all jokes aside, I take tech sales pretty seriously. I've been in it for 10 years. In terms of what a day in the life is, right now I'm starting from scratch. And what I mean by starting from scratch is it's Q1. Any enterprise rep that works in tech sales knows that means new accounts. You know, you're worried about what accounts you're going to keep. I'm currently in that position right now where I'm trying to figure out what are going to be my top 5 accounts, because we're supposed to go through a huge influx of other accounts that we're getting from other teams and such. But you know, these next 2 months are going to be pretty pivotal in doing like account planning, trying to figure out what are going to be my top accounts. I usually top of mind is trying to figure out what are going to be my tier A accounts, my tier Bs, and my tier Cs. So for anybody out there that's starting out in tech sales, or somebody that's been in tech sales for 3 to 10 years, you need to be able to understand that you have to prioritize which accounts you're going to spend the most time on, right? If we're saying you're only working 10 hours, realistically, this is like it's going to be like a 40-hour work week for sure, if not more, trying to figure out, doing the account research, figuring out like how much revenue can I get out of this company, and how much of that revenue is going to get me to my goal. So a lot of one of my favorite VPs that I've worked under in my past career always says, have the specific number in mind that you're whether it's your quota, 1.2 million, 3 million, whatever your goal is, and work backwards from there. So what you want to do is, most of my time these next few weeks is going to be able to understand, like, is my tier A account going to be able to, am I going to be able to get at least $500K out of that account? So it's going to be a lot of thorough research using things like ChatGPT. I'll spend some time on that. Outside of that, I've got a number to hit for Q1. So day in the life, consistently, I'm doing prospecting as well. It's a pretty loaded question, but I can kind of give you a breakdown in terms like from Monday through Friday. Most of the time, Mondays are going to be a lot of prep meetings. Like, a lot of people look forward to Monday. I do look forward to Monday, but I just feel like a lot of times companies can spend too much time on internal meetings. And some of those internal meetings can just be, maybe you can get a lot of that stuff through email, but usually I'll start off with like 3 to 5 focus accounts for the week. So I want to be able to make sure that I understand, are those 3 to 5 accounts, is there revenue generating activity there? Do I have specific personas, maybe like 10 to 15 personas for each account? And then work backwards from there to see if I have any meetings set up with them. If I don't have any meetings set up with them, then I line up at least some type of prospecting time or pipeline generating time, whether it's working on a specific outreach campaign, we're working through maybe leveraging a specific partner. We do a lot of work with one of the largest cloud providers, 3-letter acronym. I'm sure everyone out there knows who I'm talking about. But we do a lot of internal meetings with them to figure out what accounts actually have the projects in place and timing in place, because timing has a lot to do with some of the accounts that we work in and how they procure. But I know that's a loaded question, but I mean, how far do we want to go in depth in the data? In the day-to-day activity?
Yeah, it's definitely a loaded question. I think this really helps a lot. And maybe I think where my mind goes to is on the outside looking in. I mean, I was an engineer for 3 years before being in sales. And even though I know what it takes to be in sales now, still from the outside looking in, I can see how people get the impression like a lot of salespeople don't attend the company morale meetings or the weekly trivia or whatever type of event. I would love to, and maybe as a roundabout way of answering some more questions that we'll have. How do you kind of prioritize where you should even spend your time? What are the things that you are like absolutely must have in your week? And what are the things that I would say the average employee doesn't think about that you are not going to attend, whether that's a company meeting or like a sales interaction with a big customer, calls you don't want to be on? I'd love to pick your brain on that.
Yeah, so I think we'll start off with the first question. Like the most important meetings you should be able to attend are going to be what we call them our pod meetings. That's our sync where we're speaking to our customer success manager, we're speaking to our SE, and our SE or sales engineer for anybody out there. I know the acronyms are interchangeable, but you want to be able to spend time with those key folks that are moving the deal forward or moving the account forward. So your relationship with your customer success manager is everything, because you're not going to be able to sell into that account if they're not happy with what they currently have or potentially might have. So they're able to smooth out that relationship. So keeping everybody accountable within your account team is extremely important. So having that meeting on Monday is always like, we'll set goals. We'll have like 10 things that we need to outline, and then we'll go line by line of like, Anthony's going to pitch a specific automation tool to them on Wednesday in our meeting. But then there might be a touch base call where they're looking to extrapolate services that they've already purchased. The customer success manager then goes in and is helping facilitate them using those services. So eventually they can buy into what I'm pitching on Wednesday, right? So it kind of helps warm them up. The SC is going to be aligned with me on outlining a specific demo that we want to be able to kind of perform or figure out if it's a need or not, and also helping outline their solution architecture, right? So a lot of times being able to understand their current state, as you know, Eric, you've been successful in this, and understanding like where are they at right now. If I don't understand where they're at, and that's me being aligned with my SC on our Monday meeting, that's going to help me get to their desired state, help outline, okay, this is what they're trying to achieve on the business side. But the SC is able to keep me accountable of like, you might not want to say that, Anthony, that you're able to reduce this because we don't have that capability now. So it's a good roundabout discussion, kind of like what we're having now, where we're just naturally having a conversation. We're checking off lists through maybe like a Google Doc to keep us, it's really simple, just keeping us all accountable on what we're working towards. And as a team, I'm really big on being a team player, but as a sales rep, you really are quarterbacking. For all my Super Bowl fanatics, you love using that football metaphor, but you really are quarterbacking the deal, quarterbacking the account, because you're the face of the account. If the account goes down, a lot of people in companies know that the sales rep's going to take a lot of the blow for that, because they are supposed to be quarterbacking the deal. So that's really why Mondays are super important in that meeting. Now, the meetings that you don't want to attend on Monday are probably the meetings where it might be like a company town hall. You can, I would say, attend those meetings for morale, but you can definitely mute yourself and work on, revenue generating activity, maybe a specific LinkedIn campaign that you're running, have it on the background, right? I'm sure a lot of people have 2 to 3 screens. Like you could put the company town hall in there and get some information, or maybe view the company town hall. I've done this before where I'll view it after work or maybe on a walk or a run or something, just to make sure that you're in the know, especially for all the remote workers. It's important that morale is a lot. It means a lot to people. So having that ability to be able to kind of have that on the background, and you have to pick and choose. I think a lot of times as a remote sales rep, or even just an enterprise rep in general, even if you're in office, you have to really guard your time. And I think early on in my career, I was saying yes to a lot of things that weren't revenue generating, and I noticed that affecting my numbers. So for advice for anyone out there looking back, I think being able to muster the courage to say like, I don't really need to attend this, or, let me see if I can maybe watch a YouTube video, like one of your videos on YouTube that actually kind of shows you like, oh, this is how an enterprise deal is sold. Like something that's going to actually put an imprint on making you a better rep. That's essentially what my mentor always tells me. It's like, is this going to make you a better rep? If it's not going to make you a better rep or make you more money, do you really need to attend or prioritize that? Probably not. So I think that's probably the golden nugget that I would give to anybody being 10 years in.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's important to call out too, like for a lot of people that are looking at this career, even maybe an SDR right now, trying to become an account executive. Obviously, you're someone who works with larger accounts. Yep. This is a lot of the detail and minutia that kind of goes into it. That's not the on the phones, presenting, doing all of these different things. If you were to break down maybe, I don't know, just rough percentages, 10, 20% here or there, how would you say, like throughout the course of a week, how much is kind of prep and planning? How much is actually customer interactions? How much is internal meetings? And feel free to add other categories as well.
I think it, honestly, Eric, I think it fluctuates because a lot of times you could have a week, like 2 weeks ago, I had about 80% customer meetings. My goal for every week, and this is pretty much company-wide, industry-wide, you want to have at least 10 meetings a week. And those are 10 customer meetings. I think when me and you were teammates, I think we were held to around like 10 or 11, which seemed like a lot, but it's only about 2 a day.
Yeah. Which
is pretty standard. So you think 2 hours are allotted to a customer meeting, and out of that day, so it's really 30% of your day is spent speaking to customers. The other remaining percentage is either maybe 10% with your SE, and then the rest being prep, trying to understand like current state, trying to understand brushing up on your current state slide, brushing up on, do we have the functionality that the customer is asking for on Wednesday? But because we need to speak to them on Friday on a follow-up discussion, and we can't tell them the wrong thing, or maybe we have to send a follow-up email. I think it just fluctuates in terms of how much pipeline you have, but I think a big emphasis on my time this year is going to be spent on pipeline.
Yep.
Just because where the company's at currently, I'm seeing this from a lot of other organizations, getting into white space accounts, I would say the split there realistically, because I'm focused on the now, is going to be around 70%, 60 to 70% spent on account research and pipeline generation for at least the next 3 months. And that's typically standard for an enterprise AE or mid-market or major rep, because you're starting off the year.
Yeah.
That actually tapered down. I looked at my numbers last year, and I didn't have as many customer meetings in the front half of the year as I did in the back end. But that's because I focused so much, 60 to 70%, on figuring out how to prospect into and develop pipeline in those accounts that I just got.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see that's happened for the last 6-7 years I've been on the enterprise side. That's typically the breakdown that works the best.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'd be curious too, for those watching, your approach to potentially working on the weekends and whatnot. Yeah. I know, like when I started my career, especially the first year, 2 years, maybe even 3, I was very I would try and avoid the heavy stuff on the weekends, but also I would really try and prioritize like a lot of the customer facing stuff during the week, and would use maybe Saturday or Sunday here or there to like touch up on some admin stuff, like get things updated. I know you're 10 years in, so I'd love to pick your brain on how that's evolved, not only what it is today, but what is your stance on working on the weekend? Do you have a philosophy on that at all?
I worked a lot. The first 2 to 2.5 years at the company I'm currently at, I felt like I did work a lot on Saturdays. But the breakdown that I have there that's worked successfully is doing the expense reports. Like if you were traveling a lot in the role that we were in a couple years ago, and it's like, you don't really need to do your expense report. Our SVP has a funny saying. She's like, I'm not going to approve your expense report if it's submitted during the week, because it's not revenue generating. It's like, why are you focused on that? So do your expense reports on Saturday and Sunday. Maybe do the training that you need to do that's due on Wednesday. Do that on the weekend, or maybe do that in the afternoon on a Friday.
Yeah,
is typically when I do all those admin tasks. Maybe a specific customer request that needs to be submitted in a portal for the engineering team to know about. Probably do that on Friday, or do it in the evening. I like to do all my follow-ups. I'm pretty strict on this. Any like meeting follow-ups, if it's not leading up to a meeting that week, I'll do it at night. And I find that works the best, because I'll end up doing a little bit more work than I need to do, but it gets me ahead of the next day, if that makes sense. So I'll use this as an example. I was meeting with this large grocer last year, and instead of generating a follow-up, because I knew they had a lot of asks, I would just get in the habit of taking down all the notes and then sending that email around Wednesday night, or maybe setting it to be sent out on Thursday morning automatically through our portal.
Yeah.
to be able to just put me in a position to not spend so much time on that during the day, because the meeting's not set till another 2 weeks. So that's where you really got to be able to manage your time properly. It's like, does it make sense for you to send that follow-up like right away? It's like, you got to ask yourself that, and hold yourself accountable.
What is your philosophy to, I know a lot of times, actually one time we were in Dallas, I got like an urgent email at 8:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night. How do you react to those? How much does that impact your kind of day-to-day and headspace and all that?
Yeah. I think you need to be able to realize first, like, is this a specific fire within the account? Is it something that could probably wait till the morning? Is somebody going to get fired over this? Like, you really have to kind of be strategic there. Like, if you're at a theater, maybe you're with a significant other or a special event, that we understand things come up. But if it's something that's not detrimental to your company brand, it's not detrimental to your customer's brand, it can wait. Yep. Now, if it's something like a huge outage, like we saw last year in the summer, where there was a huge company outage, not at the company I was working at, but the company, it was a security company where they had a large outage, and it did affect our customers, and it domino affected into our technical framework that we had deployed. Now that's a different story. Yes, I'd probably escalate that, because timing's everything, especially when you work in or if you're selling operation software. So you got to pick and choose, figuring out. But if they're asking for something like around a feature that's coming down the pike at 8:30, that could probably wait. Yeah. So again, just pick and choose. Be strategic. Ask yourself, will somebody at your company get fired for this, or will somebody on the other end get fired for it? If not, it could probably wait. Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I think early on in my career, I wanted to respond to everything right away. And I think there's some merit to that, maybe in like the small business side. But I think especially for those who haven't yet sold to like enterprise level accounts, to your point, a lot of those things that come through, unless they've like CC'd the SVP or CEO or a decision maker, honestly, a lot of people like to try and make things urgent to get their stuff, get noticed. You know, it's like, even when I reach out to an airline or something, you know, I'll try and act a little extra saucy to try and get some attention to it. And in reality, you start to find over time that those things aren't crazy. Maybe two questions kind of going towards a close. I think on the outside looking in, I'm a former, 9-to-5 engineer. I worked a lot for sure, and we had some ebbs and flows, but largely you kind of knew what was going to happen, right? Maybe the project took more time than you thought or whatever, but you always knew that project was there. In sales, I think it's hard to understand. Like, I'll be honest, there are weeks where maybe the prior week I worked 60 to 80 hours a week. I traveled to New York. I had to do all these things for my customer. So maybe I'm taking more of a relaxed Friday because I've also front loaded my work for the week. There's no exact science to this, but I think I've definitely had to individually, coming from like an engineering career, like I said, where it's like I'm working 40 hours. I want to be rated well by my peers. It's a little bit different in sales. Like, could you help maybe someone on the outside looking in understand, like, what is that ebb and flow? How do you even approach that? Like, why is sales a little bit more unpredictable than maybe the traditional career path that's 40 hours, this is what you do, et cetera?
I think it's because it's people focused. You're dealing with people. Like, as much as we'd like to think that everyone's routine oriented or everyone's got different goals. And I would give you a quick example here. I was working with a company that I met with in April of last year, went out in Washington and met them. I didn't hear from those guys for almost 8 months. They poked their head out and they asked me back in late last year about a project that I had talked about in April. Again, it just came out of nowhere. And it's like they're asking me all of these demands. They had all these specific requirements they wanted our organization to meet to get the deal done. And again, you can't predict that, because who knows? You always think that you're a priority, and this is key advice here, being in this for 10 years. You always think that your solution's a priority when it's probably at the bottom of the stack. Maybe. It just depends, right? It's all about timing. But, that's why it's so important to develop pipeline, and that's why I can understand when leaders always bogging down a rep on, do you have enough pipeline? Like, because they understand that it is about timing, and is your deal being prioritized, or is it at the bottom of the stack? And that's why everything's so unpredictable. It's like you never know really where you're at. The only way to get around that is being aligned to the economic buyer, being aligned with your champion, checking in with your champion. So keen advice there would be making sure that you have regular checkpoints with the customer. If they're not attending those checkpoints that you have with your pod and your customer success manager and your engineer, that's a red flag to me that you're really not a priority. Yeah.
100%. And I think too, it's like one that was really well laid out. I think that's the hard thing to predict, and forget AI and automation and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's no chat GPT that can figure out if Bob wants to talk to you about X project.
Yeah.
I wish there was.
Yeah, not at the account executive level for sure. Like, and even SDR, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But I think, yeah, like I mentioned, I was in Dallas for an on-site. We were grabbing dinner with clients, and literally right before I'm about to go into the restaurant, one of the developers on the biggest account that I had sent an email, CC'd the SVP, the person who approved last year's multi-million-dollar contract, and had like a huge complaint that had he just come to us directly, we could have easily solved. Yeah. But now it wasn't even like the complaint and the problem was actually trivial. But this director who is not involved in this whatsoever, just months prior agreed to an extension of the deal, et cetera, sees that his biggest and most talented developer has like a bunch of problems, even though it's super small. Now it's like a whole game we have to block and tackle, and just on the fly now at 8:30 p.m. create a strategy of how to like address this, make sure that influential person knows that, hey, it's actually a small deal. It's just kind of a pop-up problem, but also make sure we address those concerns. Anyway, I think it's like these are the things that are just unpredictable compared to like an engineering career or just a more steady job. I know if every salesperson is being honest, they always have a side hustle. And obviously, like, the job is the number one thing without question. But that being said, how has sales and or just looking at a week in the life for those that are maybe trying to do something on the side, do you have that flexibility? How do you approach that and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think culturally and like spiritually, sales gives you the confidence to always want to try new things. Yeah. So I think if any sales rep out there that doesn't like have a side hustle or doesn't have at least the thought of it, like, sales gives you that ability, because it gives you that confidence, right? When you're getting that dopamine hit from commission deals and things like that, you really think you can kind of, I hope a lot of the sales reps have that emotion, especially when starting out, that you can just kind of like take on the world, or, do something like you, where you just became a successful entrepreneur, right? So I think being able to have that confidence of doing those types of side hustles, I think are important, because I think having that confidence outside of work will carry into your confidence in your main role or in your main job. I know I started making content about 10, 11 months ago, and I think it helped me in my role. While my numbers still need a little bit of improvement over the last year just due to the economy, I think it's given me the ability, by making content, by maybe doing other specific side hustles, it's rejuvenated me to look at my main career and be like, it gives me a more focus, or it gives me the ability to even miss my main job sometimes. And what I mean by that is like the passion that I have for it. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm reading a specific book and I'm outlining something to a client outside of work. I can maybe relate that to my client and being a better rep at the company that I'm currently at. So I think it's given me the ability, one, confidence, two, it's like a refresher to step away. If you're too inundated with anything, what happens? You get tired of it, you get burnt out. Yeah. You don't have to go on a sabbatical. You could maybe work on a photography side hustle that you're working on, but then you can go back to your main job because it feels a little bit more refreshing. So, and it gets you time away to miss it. Yeah. So I think sales gives you that flexibility too, because sometimes work might not be too heavy, or you might be at your number. Yeah. When you're at your number, it's like, hey, maybe I could, do a photography gig on Saturday or Sunday, right? Because you got a little bit more energy. Yeah. So I think that's what people like about sales. A lot of people say it's unpredictable, but no,
I agree.
Depends.
I think obviously there's people from all walks of life that have created successful companies, but I think honestly a lot of what we walk through explains why you often see salespeople taking those chances and or building companies, because one, over the course of 10 years, you've learned what actually moves the needle and what doesn't. I think that's a really important thing. But two, I think to your point, it's like the way I look at, again, the most successful salespeople in the world, sales is absolutely the number one focus. Like, I don't want that to be lost here. The point is not get a sales job and immediately start doing something outside of work. Like, you have to get good at sales, and there's a lot of money to be had if you get really good at that. But I also look at it almost like a high performance athlete. It's like, do you want the guy on your football team that just plays football and then goes home and plays Madden for 4 hours a day? Or do you want the guy like a Tyreek Hill who's really good at football and almost qualified for sprinting in the Olympics and loves competing at every single level of it? And obviously you don't want to get to a point where any of those things become a major distraction, but I think hopefully that analogy provides like some, I don't know, some parallel to a sales career.
Yeah.
It's like, ironically, the people who actually have a healthy amount of balance, and whether it's monetarily successful or just something like a photography gig or whatever it might be, that's like a fun hobby paying rent, but not going to be the next Salesforce. I think those are the kinds of things that actually ironically make a salesperson really good, because you give them the ability to keep that energy and let that out in another capacity. It's not 100% like always company focused as well. So
my favorite saying that my dad always tells me is keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
So whether it's sales or whatever you're working in, keep that the main focus. You don't want to be a jack of all trades, but master something. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is a solid conversation. Yeah. And again, Anthony's social is linked in the description below. We'll definitely watch the comments too if you guys have questions, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was more of hopefully a real talk about an actual day in the life, not I grab a burger at the Ritz-Carlton lobby for lunch. Sure. And it's 3:00. I'm going to give a quick demo, and now I go to my rooftop pool. It's not one of those. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of it. Anthony, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you again.